Listen to this carefully. No matter how hard you try, there will always be something capable of breaking you. A single word, an abandonment, an unexpected betrayal. Perhaps you have wished to become someone unbreakable, someone untouched by criticism, rejection, or loss, someone who no longer feels that quiet, corrosive pain eating away from the inside, even while you pretend everything is fine on the outside. But here is the truth almost no one dares to say out loud. The more you try not to feel pain, the more power it gains over you. Every attempt to numb yourself, to shield your heart, to hide what hurts, only tightens the chains. You remain captive to what others say, to what they do, to what they withhold. Not because you are weak, but because you are using the wrong strategy to survive. Most people live this way. The only difference is that some learn to fake strength better than others. Carl Jung, one of the most unsettling thinkers in depth psychology, made this painfully clear. We are not defined by what happens to us, but by what we do with what happens to us. And here is the key most people never truly understand. This is not about becoming cold. It is not about cutting yourself off from the world. It is not about being untouchable. It is about integration, about bringing into the light what currently rules you from the shadows. Because real strength is not about never bleeding. Real strength is knowing who you are while you bleed. If this message makes you uncomfortable, that is not an accident. This is for you if you are tired of feeling like you always lose emotionally, if you sense that others have a power over you that you cannot explain. But before we go any further, you need to hear this warning. What comes next may hurt, and precisely because of that, it may be the thing that finally frees you. Let us begin. You believe that what hurts you is out there, in what others do, in what they say without thinking, in the abandonments you carry, in the betrayals you never saw coming. But here is the truth that is hardest to accept. None of it would have so much power if there were not something open inside you. What wounds you is not the event itself. It is what that event awakens within you. It is the story you replay again and again. A trauma you never faced. A void you learned to cover with strength, with pride, with that desperate need to appear stable when inside you are falling apart. Jung was uncompromising about this. The pain we attribute to the outside world is almost always the reflection of something that has not yet been integrated within us. That is why this is so disturbing. Some people go through devastating losses and do not break, while others collapse from a single comment. It is not what happens, it is where it strikes. Now comes the uncomfortable part. You continue to suffer because deep down, you still believe you can control how the world should treat you. You keep trying to be enough, kinder, stronger, smarter, more understanding, as if becoming better would somehow armor you against pain. But control is an illusion, and as long as you cling to it, you will live in constant tension, trying to anticipate the unpredictable, trying to avoid the inevitable. Do you want to stop suffering? Then listen closely. Stop trying to protect yourself from suffering. What you need is not more control, but more awareness. Because as long as you believe others must change for your pain to disappear, you will remain a slave to their actions. Your freedom begins the moment you understand something essential. Nothing that comes from the outside has power unless it finds an echo within you. And this is where the real conflict begins. Not outside, but inside, in the unconscious. What you do not see, What you do not understand, what you have not faced, does not merely influence you, it governs you. And this is where everything is decided. Whether you continue reacting for the rest of your life, or whether you finally begin to choose. The greatest lie you have been told is that you are in control of your life. Wake up. You are not. At least not while you continue to live on autopilot, reacting without knowing why, feeling without understanding where it comes from, making decisions that you later sabotage yourself. Carl Jung said it without hesitation. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is not a metaphor. This is exactly what is happening to you right now. The pain that appears without warning, the anger that erupts out of nowhere, the sadness that floods you when, in theory, everything is fine. None of this is random. These are messages. Messages from parts of you that were ignored, repressed, pushed aside, forgotten. And they will not stop speaking until you are willing to listen. What you resist does not disappear. It waits. It grows stronger in the dark. And the longer you avoid it, the more violently it demands your attention. This is why repeating the same emotional patterns feels inevitable. This is why you attract the same situations with different faces. The unconscious does not punish you. It educates you relentlessly until you learn. The moment you stop asking, "Why does this keep happening to me?" and start asking, "What within me is asking to be seen?" everything changes. Pain stops being an enemy and becomes a guide. Not a comfortable one, but an honest one. Integration is not about fixing yourself. It is about reclaiming the parts of you that were exiled in order to survive. When you stop running from your inner wounds, the world loses its grip on you. Criticism still exists, but it no longer defines you. Rejection may still hurt, but it no longer destroys you. Loss still leaves a mark, but it no longer empties you, because you are no longer fighting yourself. This is the path few choose, not because it is impossible, but because it demands responsibility. It demands that you stop blaming the outside and turn inward. But on the other side of that discomfort is something most people never experience: emotional freedom. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of consciousness. And that is where your real power begins. Jung called this territory the unconscious. And it is not a passive place. It is not a vague cloud of forgotten thoughts drifting in the background. It is an active force, a living system made of memories, wounds, desires, impulses, fears, and unresolved experiences that you chose not to face, but that never stopped making decisions for you. Even when you believe you are in control, even when you think you are choosing freely, this inner world continues to operate silently, shaping your reactions, your attachments, your anxieties, and your limits. Have you ever wondered why certain words can completely shatter you, while the same words leave others untouched? It is because those words do not hit you from the outside. They pass straight through you. They strike something already wounded within you. They activate old emotional scars that were never allowed to heal. And if those wounds are still open, it is not because life keeps hurting you, but because you never truly faced them. You only hid them. You pushed them down, buried them beneath layers of distraction, denial, strength, or silence. And now you keep stumbling over them again and again in different forms. Jung was clear about this. Nothing can be changed until it is accepted. And here is the part that is hardest to admit. You have not accepted yourself. You have judged yourself. You have suppressed yourself. You have silenced parts of who you are. as if self-punishment could somehow become a solution, as if being harder on yourself would finally make you worthy, safe, or free. But repression does not create peace. It only creates pressure. The unconscious does not disappear when you ignore it. It does something far more dangerous. It looks for other exits. It manifests through toxic relationships that you keep repeating even when you promise yourself this time will be different. It appears in self-sabotaging patterns you cannot seem to break, no matter how much you try. It shows up as anxiety that arrives precisely when everything seems to be going well, as fear that has no clear cause, as emotional storms that take you by surprise. This is not bad luck. It is not weakness. It is not fate working against you. It is your unconscious trying to wake you up while you insist on staying asleep. If you truly want to stop suffering, then you must stop running from what lives inside you. Because as long as you do not know your own unconscious, you will remain a puppet of your emotions, your reactions, and your past. And the more you try to protect yourself from external pain, the more exposed you become to internal pain. The escape is not in hardening yourself. It is not in defending yourself. It is not in becoming untouchable by force. The way out is integration. And integration is not an act of resistance. It is an act of deep, honest knowledge. This leads to the most important question of all. What does it really mean to be unbreakable? And why does this strength not come from armor, but from something far more difficult to achieve? Acceptance. Most people believe the only way to avoid being hurt is to close themselves off. They build walls. They wear masks. They construct an emotional armor and repeat a sentence that sounds powerful, but is deeply false. Nothing affects me anymore. I do not care. Yet inside, they are still bleeding. They are still eroding slowly because the problem was never feeling. The problem was never sensitivity. The problem is not knowing what you feel or why you feel it. And that only happens when you do not truly know yourself. Jung was painfully precise when he said, "Know all the theories, master all the techniques, but when you touch a human soul, be just another human soul. That human soul you keep hiding behind control, discipline, toughness, and invulnerability is asking to be seen." Emotional strength has nothing to do with becoming cold. It is not about ignoring pain. It is not about avoiding conflict. It is not about pretending that nothing matters. True strength is far more uncomfortable than that. It requires integration. It requires acceptance. It requires bringing into the light everything you once buried in the dark. You do not become untouchable by placing a barrier between yourself and the world. You become untouchable when you understand something decisive. No one can use against you what you have already embraced within yourself. When you integrate your shadow, your fears, your flaws, your insecurities, something profound changes. You stop reacting blindly. You begin to observe. You begin to choose. You are no longer driven unconsciously by old wounds. That is freedom. Jung called this process individuation, not becoming better in the moral sense, not becoming what others expect from you, not becoming what you thought you had to be in order to be accepted, but becoming whole, becoming what emerges when light and shadow stop fighting each other and finally recognize that they belong to the same self. Jung said it clearly, and his message still stands. Until you face what lives within you, it will control you from the shadows. But once you integrate it, it loses its power over you, and for the first time, you truly become yourself. Individuation is not a process of becoming perfect. It is a process of becoming whole. You don't need to become better, you need to become complete. And here is the truth almost no one dares to tell you. The more you run from pain, the more it chases you. The more you try not to be affected, the more fragile you become. But when you face your own wounds, when you accept who you are in your entirety, the beautiful and the ugly, the noble and the shameful, the light and the dark, nothing external has the power to dismantle you. Nothing outside of you can destroy what has already been integrated within you. This path, however, demands courage, real courage, the courage to look inward, the courage to remove the masks, the courage to feel instead of escaping, because it is precisely inside pain where the key to transformation is hidden, not outside, not in distraction, not in pleasure, not in denial. Pain is not a mistake in your life, it is a doorway, and when you understand this, you begin to see why suffering is not your enemy, but the threshold to your true strength. From a very young age, you were taught to hate pain. You were conditioned to believe that suffering is weakness, that crying is useless, that feeling too deeply makes you vulnerable, that sensitivity is a flaw. So you learned to run. You learned to suppress. You learned to numb yourself. You learned to distract your mind, to fill your time, to avoid silence, to avoid stillness, to avoid yourself. And the more you ran, the faster the pain followed you. Because pain does not disappear when you ignore it, it transforms. Unfaced pain becomes anxiety. It becomes anger that explodes without warning. It becomes emptiness. It becomes apathy. It becomes chronic fatigue. It becomes self-sabotage. It becomes addictions. It becomes destructive impulses you don't even understand. Ignored pain does not die. It burrows into you. It digs tunnels inside your psyche, inside your nervous system, inside your identity, until one day, without warning, everything collapses. And you call it a crisis, but it was never sudden. It was accumulated silence. Jung understood suffering in a radically different way. For him, pain was not an enemy. It was a messenger. It was the language of the soul. It was the alarm system of the unconscious. It was the voice of your totality trying to reach your awareness. That is why he said something deeply uncomfortable for anyone who only wants to feel good. He compared depression to a woman in black. If she appears, don't chase her away. Invite her in. Sit with her. Listen to what she has to say. But you don't listen. You silence it. You distract yourself. You stay busy. You numb your emotions. You anesthetize your mind. You do everything except look. And here is the question almost no one dares to ask. What is this pain trying to show you? Because the truth is simple and brutal. Suffering hurts so much because you are still at war with yourself. One part of you wants to grow. Another part wants everything to stay the same. Something inside you pushes toward transformation. But your ego, addicted to control and familiarity, tries to suppress that call. And in that friction, pain is born. Because change hurts. Growth hurts. Letting go of old beliefs hurts. Breaking toxic bonds hurts. Losing identities hurts. Allowing what no longer serves you to die hurts. Leaving old versions of yourself behind hurts. All of that is grief, an internal process of death and rebirth, a psychological funeral, a symbolic collapse. But this is the part almost no one understands. It is exactly in that space of inner ruin where something new can be born. When everything inside you deconstructs, when your certainties collapse, when your defenses fall, when your pain exposes your vulnerability. For the first time, you can see who you truly are, without protection, without performance, without roles, without masks. And in that exact point, suffering stops being a punishment and becomes sacred, because it brings you to your knees in front of the only thing that can free you, yourself. Jung knew this. He understood that suffering is not a system error. It is part of the process. Pain is not the end of the path. It is the beginning of the journey toward individuation. Most people turn back before crossing that dark valley. They escape. They distract themselves. They return to the surface. They choose comfort over truth. They choose familiarity over transformation. But if you are still here, it's because something in you is ready to cross, ready to go through, ready to descend, ready to face what others avoid. Very few people have the courage to begin the path of individuation, and even fewer have the courage to complete it. Because this path does not promise comfort. It offers no guarantees. It does not protect your ego. It dismantles it. Jung defined individuation as the process of becoming who you truly are, but almost no one understands what that really means. It means, first of all, stopping being who you thought you were. And that hurts more than any external rejection, because you begin to see something disturbing. Much of your identity was a construction. You are not your achievements. You are not your traumas. You are not the image you created to be loved, accepted, respected, admired. All of that was survival strategy, psychological armor, emotional adaptation. But surviving is not living. Individuation is the call of life beyond survival. It is the moment when the unconscious pushes everything repressed to the surface, everything hidden, everything denied, everything distorted. Jung was clear. Individuation requires the dissolution of the persona, because the persona is nothing more than a socially convenient mask. In simple terms, you must shed the skin you built to discover what exists underneath. And in that process, you begin to become untouchable. Not because nothing affects you anymore, but because you already walked through the fire, because you faced your monsters, because you looked directly at your shame, your fear, your dependency, your anger, your insecurity, your darkness, and said, "I see you, and you no longer rule me." That inner clarity, that lucidity in front of your own shadow becomes a source of strength that does not depend on approval, validation, recognition, or control. You no longer need to please everyone. You no longer need to win every argument. You no longer need to perform strength. You no longer need to prove anything, because you know who you are, and that cannot be taken from you. Real emotional armor is not a shell. It is not hardness. It is not numbness. It is a center, a core, the integration of all your parts into a stable consciousness that remains grounded even in the storm. You can feel pain, but it doesn't break you. You can be wounded, but you don't lose yourself. You can suffer, but you don't fragment, because you stopped living on the surface and began inhabiting depth. And yes, depth has a price. That price is solitude, not because you are alone, but because very few people can walk with you that far inside. Most people remain on the surface of life, clinging to masks, afraid to feel, afraid to look too deeply within themselves. They survive by pretending, by adapting, by hiding what is real. And when you begin to free yourself from that way of living, distance becomes inevitable. You start to separate, not because you reject others, but because you are no longer the same person. This distance is not arrogance, and it is not superiority. It is maturation. You do not walk away out of pride. You walk away because you no longer fit in the places where you once had to hide who you were. You outgrow the roles you played to be accepted, and that growth creates space between you and what no longer resonates. And this brings us to the final and most important stage of the journey: consciousness as protection. Because it is not strength that truly protects you. It is clarity. In the end, you will understand that only from a state of awareness does anything lose its power over you. Not some things, everything. Now that you have reached this point, there is something that must be said plainly, without comfort or decoration. Nothing, absolutely nothing, can protect you from external suffering if you remain unconscious of what is happening inside you. Words will continue to hurt you. Rejection will continue to leave marks. Failures will continue to knock you down until you wake up. And waking up is not a magical event or a sudden revelation. It is a daily choice. It is choosing to look inward even when it hurts. It is taking responsibility for everything you feel without blaming others, without blaming the past, without blaming fate. It is deciding that your inner world matters more than the stories you tell yourself about the outside world. Carl Jung expressed this with uncompromising clarity. What you resist persists, and what you accept transforms. For much of your life, you have been resisting the fear of not being enough, the emptiness of rejection, the pain of loneliness, the anxiety of feeling unseen and unheard. And what did you do with all of that? You hid. You silenced yourself. You tried to control everything. You tried to be perfect. You tried to be strong all the time. And all of that effort led you here, exhausted, drained, tired of fighting the world and fighting yourself at the same time. But now you understand something essential. True emotional immunity is not hardness. It is clarity. It is not about building thicker armor or becoming colder. It is about expanding your awareness. Because when you understand your triggers, your patterns, your wounds, the actions of others stop destroying you. You still feel, but you no longer drown. You still suffer, but you no longer lose yourself in it. You remain present, rooted, conscious. And that changes everything. What protects you is not defending yourself from life, but immersing yourself fully in it. Those who live on the surface are struck by every wave. Every word destabilizes them. Every setback shakes them. But those who dare to dive deeper discover something different. Silence beneath the chaos. Stability beneath the movement. Power beneath the fear. And that is where you are beginning to live now. When you inhabit that place of integration, presence, and acceptance, the world may still try to knock you down, but it no longer finds where to hit you. Not because life becomes gentle, but because you become grounded. You are no longer fragmented. You are no longer running from yourself. You are no longer asleep. If this message awakens something within you, do not keep it silent. Write it in the comments. Not an opinion, but a decision. Write, I choose consciousness. This is not the end. It is the beginning of living awake. And if you truly understood something today, then you already know that living asleep is no longer an option for you. Subscribing to this channel is not about supporting a video. It is about making a decision. It is saying, I no longer want to react without understanding why. I no longer want to keep running from myself. Activate the notification bell if you are willing to listen even when the truth is uncomfortable. Because this space is not here to entertain your ego, but to awaken your awareness. To distract you, it's to wake you up.